This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Judaism Without Apologizing. Today I sat down with someone who's inspired thousands of people across the globe, and that is none other than Reb Menachem Nissel. Reb Nissel is one of those people who somehow blends depth and clarity and humor all at the same time. He has been teaching in seminaries in Yerushalayim for decades. He's been a Rebbe in Yisrael. He gives shiurim and tours all across Europe and the world. And he's also a senior educator for NCSY and the author of some pretty incredible books like Rigshei Lev, Women and Tefillah, as well as the book Looking into the Sun, which is his best-selling biography of his Rebbe, Reb Moshe Shapiro, which came out pretty recently. And we had a really fascinating conversation. We talked about whether people actually need to go to seminary and some of the big misconceptions about what seminary is supposed to be. And I even asked him why seminary is so expensive. We also got into Shidduchim, we got into Machshava, we got into anti-Semitism, and of course, his Rebbe Reb Moshe Shapiro. And it's an honest, sharp, really eye-opening conversation. And if you've ever heard Rebbe Nissel speak, you know that he is certainly not a man that minces words. So buckle up, because this is an interview that will certainly ruffle some feathers. This is Judaism Without Apologizing.
A Torah Anytime original series.
Rabbi Nissel, Shalom Aleichem. It's a pleasure to have you on the Judaism Without Apologizing podcast, an exclusive Torah Anytime original series. Thank you very much for coming.
It is so exciting to be here in your beautiful home.
Yes. So can you give us a quick 30-second bio of your life, of what you do, and how you do it?
30 seconds.
Yes.
Be sure, 30 seconds. Bottom line, I see myself a Talmud of Reb Moshe Shapiro, Zatzal, Talmud of Shem Avolva, Zatzal. Those two luminaries basically guide everything I do with my life. I pride myself to be a teacher. I'm a zochet to be husband, father, Saba, building my beautiful home in Yerushalayim Rakedesh. And I'm just passionate about caring about Klal Yisrael.
Great. Excellent. So you have been a seminary teacher for a long time, several decades at this point?
Yeah, I think I started somewhere between the Civil War and Vietnam. I can't remember exactly, but it's been literally forever.
So I want to talk about that for a minute, and I want to address the elephant in the room, which is...
Talking about your mother-in-law?
No, the other elephant in the room.
Okay.
Which is, what is the point of seminary? What is the point? What is the purpose? Is it to make people frummer? Is it to prep them for marriage? Is it some sort of, expensive trip for fun? What is the point?
So it happens to be a very good question, which I get from many, many distraught fathers who are about to spend half of their fortune on sending their daughters to seminary for a year. The way I personally see it, I'm going to quote my Rebbe Revolver for a moment. The Mesil Seshar begins with Yesod HaChasidus V'Sherish HaVoda, and Revolver would always speak about Yesodos, which is foundations, and Shroshim, which are roots under the ground. And he would explain that, for example, in this house, you build it mortar and bricks, okay? In exactly the same way you build a person, that they have to know halacha, they have to know Jewish history, they have to know facts. And that's how you build a person. But you've got this beautiful tree over here, which is it alive? Is it alive? I don't want to ask.
It is not alive.
Okay, but let's pretend it's alive for one moment. There's something that's alive, is delicate, and it has true chiyas to it, true vitality to it. And every human being needs to have that dimension called shroshim as well, that makes them into who they are. So I believe that what we do in Israel, which we cannot do in America, and I literally got mad last week at one of my Talmidim who said, why can't I keep my daughter in America? Why can't I send it to England? In Eretz Yisrael, you give a young lady shroshim, that I don't believe any other place in the world can do. And those shroshim translate into their future. You can see it, let's say, on their 30th birthday, that they have terror instincts and how to live their lives, deal with their marriages, their children, their neighbors, real life. They're bringing out this subliminal shroshim that good seminaries have given to them. That's payday. You see, when they build their Jewish homes, what they gained is not so much the pages and pages of notes that they've accumulated, but rather it's the experience that comes with the notes that goes deep down into their essence. And that is something that makes every single penny worthwhile.
So let me harp on one of the things that you said. Why can I not accomplish that in Borough Park or in London?
You got to get out of your comfort zone. That's number one. You got to go as far away as you can from your usual haunts of where you've hung out. And you need to go to a place that is kula kedusha, right? Lech lecha me'artzecha, u'moladetecha, u'mebeis avicha. Artzecha is the country that you know. Moladetecha is the pizza store that you know. And beis avicha is that even though you can come from a phenomenal home, but you don't have that breadth that you do when you come to Eretz Yisrael, and you're there with people from all over the world. You walk a distance from the kotel, the kaisel, whatever you want. And you meet teachers that are broadening you with different viewpoints. And most of all, you're breathing in the avira da'ara machkim, right? You're being that incredible power that Eretz Yisrael has. You can't get that here. It doesn't work. And again, there are individuals where it does work for. I just taught in Benos Miriam. Fagi Bertram Nashon, she never went to seminary. She brought me in. She did not need seminary. I was there when the Rebbetzin Tema Kamenetsky told her, you don't need to go to seminary. And she didn't. She got what she needed from her home. She came built. But she's from the 5%. And the remaining 95%, there's no question in my mind that there's a certain level of maturity and inner strength that they don't even know that they have. Self-discovery, finding out different parts of their personality that can only be brought out by having roommates from foreign countries and teachers that are saying things that are like they're struggling with, and having those late night DMCs till 3 a.m. with their friends. And that is what changes them. That's what gives them the shroshim. And that you see, their homes 5 years later, 10 years later, is different from the ones that did not go. It is definitely stronger, definitely more Torah authentic. And they have that instinct to know what to do when those inevitable crises and struggles that life brings you actually happens.
Wow. So do you think that seminaries to a degree have become a little bit of like a status symbol where there's like what you're describing is fading a little bit, and you go to a seminary where everyone's the exact same as you nowadays. There's little to no diversity. Everyone might even be from the same community within Lakewood or Muncie or Flatbush. Is that what you've just described slowly fading away, and it becomes like an experience, like a glorified trip with other people who agree with you, who just validate what you already were taught by your own community? Is that a fear?
Unfortunately, I cannot tell a lie, right? There's a lot of truth in what you're saying. And honestly, those could be, I could only speak for the seminaries that I work for. I work for example, Ma'or Beis Yaakov. And there I know that the Menal Rebbe Greenwald puts a lot of thought to make sure that it doesn't happen. He tries to focus on the individual. He tries to make sure that people are spending time on their own, thinking about who they are. But you're right. And if a young lady says to me, which seminary should I choose? I will literally beg them, don't go, well, my friends are going there and it's going to be so cool. No, stop and think, what is authentically best for you? And don't worry about Shidduchim, because I know you're going to bring up Shidduchim at some point, right? Do not worry about Shidduchim. Ask yourself what's going to be best for you. And very, very often, the answer to what's going to be best for you is to go not where your friends are going. Maybe one friend, right? Just that you can integrate a little bit easier. but to go to places that's a little bit out of your comfort zone. That's what I encourage. You're describing a problem. I tell each individual who comes up to me and says, what should I choose? Don't fall for that problem.
Wow, interesting. So let me ask you this question. Do you think that some seminaries are promoting extremism where some girls are just ignited, but with pretty extreme, I'm calling them extreme, they obviously wouldn't call them extreme, ideas, mahalchin in Avodas Hashem, they come back and they're not ready for it. I'm not calling them extreme because they're wrong. I'm saying for that girl, it's extreme, but they, swallowed the whole thing and they come back.
When you say extreme, that's a code word for kolel.
Or that live in a 1-bedroom apartment with 6 kids and no couch, and Mesiras Nefesh is a good thing, and the more Mesiras Nefesh, the better. And they, in 1 year, swallow that whole and come back, and they want a boy who's gonna do that. And then 5 years in, when that becomes like unbearable, they begin to resent that, and they don't like that. And their friends who are just middle income people who are living in nice homes, and their husband is a Rebbe or he's working, but it's like a normal house. They're sort of slaving away with a lot of Mesiras Nefesh just to be Yotze, their Mechaneches, who was a little bit extreme, who lived in Yerushalayim and didn't know the intricacies of America well. And that passion wore off. Is that a problem, or am I making something up?
It's definitely a problem. Let me just try and justify. First of all, for those people that push that lifestyle, in their mind, they're trying to allow the young lady's pendulum to swing to the right, knowing sometimes it goes back into the center again afterwards, but not all the way to the center. They're trying to give them a possible vision, so it doesn't work out. At least it'll get close to that. I can only really speak for myself. I can't even speak for my colleagues in the seminaries that I work. I know what I teach. I know my mantra. My definition of kollel is a finishing school for zvulons, meaning for balabatim. You and I secretly know, we're right here in Lakewood at the moment, that there's a ton of burnout with the young men. I was actually speaking to a Talmud last night in Tom's River, and he told me, it gets hard to be kaveh. People burn out by the time they're 30. It's very clear that the ones that did time, that learned in kollel in their mid-20s, their chances of learning in their 30s and 40s and 50s is much higher. So I tell young ladies, here's the deal. You want your husband to be learning, so at least do, after the wedding, 1, 2, 3 years of kollel, just to ensure that it's in your husband's bloodstream in an era where it's increasingly hard for young men to sit still and to be kaveh itim and to live a Torah lifestyle the way they're supposed to do. So that's an investment for balabatim. There are young ladies that I teach who can do more. And most of them, I will say to them, you cannot do poverty. Yeah, just Baruch Hashem, I learned throughout my 20s, and no one was supporting me, but we did not do poverty. My wife and I, we both worked. I worked on the side. I was tutoring. I was an Uber driver before Uber. I used to get up at 6 in the morning. No one believed, my kids don't believe I did this. And I used to drive kids to school and make some pocket money on the side, because I had this vision that it was important for me to be a Torah scholar. Way before I ever thought of teaching. I only started taking teaching seriously when I was in my late 20s. But again, there's something beautiful about the kollel system in our generation, when the world is so heavily in one direction, to have those anchors in the other direction, which is basically the anchor of Klal Yisrael. It's something beautiful about people that live modestly, that live a Torah lifestyle, like Aaron Leib Steinman describes about his own world, on one condition, that this has to be a family that's going to be happy. If they're not happy, if the kids are not happy, they're doing it wrong. So again, we just summarize what I just said. There are a few individuals who really can go all the way. They can even learn beyond 30. Volba used to say, I don't understand how Avrechim learning over the age of 30 when there's so much that they can do in Kiruv and Chinuch and Rabbanos. The other Reb Moshe Shapiro, when I once dared to ask him, should I push my sons and son-in-laws who are like turning 30 and going into their 30s, I pushed them to go and find a job in Chinuch and Kiruv to step out. And he looked at me and said, Menachem, ten mod, right? Let them learn a little bit. So I kept my mouth shut. And it works out. Each one of my sons found their place. My second son opened up a yeshiva. And dafka for kids like him, the kids that are struggling a little bit, who are good heads, but need a warm place. My oldest son is his Sholem Meshiv. I have, you know my family, okay? David Meir lives in Miami. He works with Israelis. The bottom line is that things tend to sort themselves out. If they have healthy chinuch, they'll understand the importance of responsibility, to make sure there's food on the table, to make sure their kids are clothed, their kids are happy, the kids have what to do on their vacays. So again, that is for one segment. The vast majority of that gonna marry Zvulans. And for them, they need 1 or 2 years after the wedding just to be able to make sure that Torah is in the bloodstream of their husbands, that they start their marriage with this like, lechatchila, everything is perfect. Husband goes to shul, then he goes to kollel, he learns, he comes home, spends time with the family, he goes back to kollel. Do that for a couple of years, and then afterwards they branch out and they go to work, go to law school or whatever works for them.
So let me ask one final question about the seminary world, and that is, why is it that it's so expensive? There's like murmurings and rumblings in the coffee rooms in America that it's like a shtickle scam, that you have 350 girls, you're charging, what, $35,000, $30,000? That's like more than $10 million. Where does the money go?
So I've never looked at the books. And honestly, I don't get paid particularly well by any of the seminaries. I'm going to get into trouble now. But yeah, that's it. That's one of the reasons why I'm here now, Hillel. I try to make a living. No one who works for the seminaries is becoming rich. They all have to figure out their finances somehow through a father-in-law, wife working, side jobs, and so on and so forth. The Menahalim are people who people think are extremely rich. I know them personally. They're my friends. They make a good living, but they're not rich. Okay, they're not like, they are able to marry off all their kids. But I know them personally, and each one of them, they're people like I just know Rabbi Schaffman. Okay, I'm telling you, Rabbi Schaffman charges the full price. I know him as a person. The person is only interested in chinuch, only interested in what's best for his students. And he just makes sure that he has, he lives modestly in the same apartment he has for the last 40 years. He wants to make sure that he has what's best for the girls. So I have no idea. I never checked the books. I just honestly know that these are really good people. And I'm not saying this because I want to keep my jobs. They're really good people. Everyone that knows Rabbi Schaffman and all the other people that I work for, one after the other, there are people I just did a Shabbaton last week for the Arbachs and Bar Miriam. You look into their brains at any given moment, all they're thinking of what's best for their students. God knows how they manage to budget themselves, but they're totally l'shem shamayim. And this is the cost of how these things work. And I still think it's significantly less than paying for university.
For sure.
Also keep in mind that you can't fundraise for a seminary. It just doesn't work. You can fundraise for a yeshiva. My son, at any given moment, is paranoid about making the budget he has to fundraise. He can't expect it from tuition. Seminaries are going to say, hey, would you like to spend your hard-earned money to help a girl spend a year in Israel? Not happening. It's just not that. So they cannot fundraise. And they have to make it into the tuition.
So if you would just conclude this segment by if you could say one thing to a girl who's about to get on the plane and try to get the best out of her year, what would you tell that girl?
Wow. Okay, one thing. she's getting on the plane. That means she's already chosen her seminary. So she already heard me give her a speech.
Yes.
Be authentic and choose the seminary that's best for you. Is to soak in the experience. Make each day the best day ever. Don't do a, sometimes I don't feel like doing anything day. Really try and squeeze the experience. Make every day a little drop of Rebbe Akiva's water on that rock that is that stone in your heart till it makes a hole right through. And try and make every day as special as possible. Enjoy yourself. Enjoy the laughter, enjoy the intellectual stimulation, but ultimately it's the emotional dimension that's most important, and have the attitude that I must experience every day to its fullest.
So let's move on to the next stage in life, which is Shidduchim, which I've seen you have several shiurim on Torah Anytime right now
Oh yeah,
about this topic.
Torah Anytime, and you can subscribe to my YouTube channel right now. I really want to get these ideas out there. Shidduchim, I'm very passionate about it because I'm the one that listens to all the pain.
So let's start with the generic, and then we'll get to some of the specifics. What would you say is your biggest pet peeve when it comes to Shidduchim? If you could have a megaphone and tell all girls, all mothers, all boys in the Shidduch world right now something, what would you say if you could be brutally honest?
My pet peeve is that people should stop believing there's a God in this world. My pet peeve is, oh my gosh, did he just say that? Yeah, I just said that. I honestly think that my pet peeve is that people read Parshas Chayei Sarah wrong. If you ask anyone, what is the message of Chayei Sarah, which by chance is next week's Parsha, right? What's the message of Chayei Sarah? And everyone says, Hishtablis, Hishtablis. So what's the Hishtablis of Chayei Sarah? What would you say? Eliezer, right? He went out, went to the other side of the world, looked for Simon to find the right Shidduch. Right? It was hard work. If you wait another Parsha till Yaakov Avinu, it was insanely hard for him to find Shidduchim. You've got those two extremes, the Yitzhak experience and the Yaakov experience. One was Hishtadlis, everything went chick-chack. The other one was like, oh my gosh, you're dealing with a Lavan, life is hell. But they always forget that the original Hishtadlis for Shidduchim was Yitzhak davening mincha. And I'm so into this. I don't want to, I'm not summarizing this whole sugya over here. I believe this from the bottom of my heart. And Americans like to talk about crisis, everything's a crisis and stuff like that. And Gedolim are dealing with the broader, bigger issues of what's going on. Every so often they come out with new ideas for Shidduchim. Mishpacha magazine, who I write for, every couple of months comes out with these new initiatives. You know what? They're all fantastic. But I deal with real people going through the real pain of looking for a shidduch. This is what I say to them. The first hishtadlus is Yitzchak davening mincha. In Europe, when a girl found a good shidduch, they used to say, that girl, git davening mincha. She knew how to daven mincha well. And he took his 3 steps back. He turned around, and there she was. Rivka was right there, falling off her camel. So he davened that mincha. That was his hishtadlus. The Chazon Ish says the ikar hishtadlus for shidduchim is tefillah. You bring HaKadosh Baruch Hu to the centerpiece of the narrative, and you tell HaKadosh Baruch Hu something very simple. All I need is to marry one person. And after that, you're in his good hands. You do your hishtadlus, just like you do for your health or for your parnasa. You do your hishtadlus for shidduchim. You're probably going to ask me this. I'm going to say this to you right up front. I always tell young ladies, when you go to shadchan, you go to shadchan with exactly the same mindset as you go to your dentist. You're going to a professional, they're going to do their stuff. It's going to be humiliating. You have to open your mouth and they're going to go, yeah, this is what they're going to do to you. Just take it in your stride. Don't let it traumatize you. At the end of the day, it's just your hishtadlus. How's the shidduch going to come? Don't worry. The Sheva Brachos is going to be great stories to be told. But make sure you put Kadosh Baruch Hu center to your tefillos. I'm not a big fan of davening early. I just had this argument with my daughter. My youngest daughter is entering Shidduchim. I told her a year ago, wait, You know, plenty of time to daven for your shidduchim. You don't have to start early. When you're in the parsha, you make sure that Akash Baruch Hu is close to you. You tell Akash Baruch Hu, I'm not going to let anything depress me. I'm not going to let anything overwhelm me. I know it's in your hands. At the right moment, you're going to find me exactly the right guy.
So let me ask you this. Do you think we've created a generation that's obsessed with checking boxes where we almost don't care about the personality, about their tchunas hanefesh? It's all about where do her parents daven, where do her grandparents daven, which camp did her father go to, or his father go
Don't forget what she got in 5th grade for her
in 5th
mathematics.
grade.
Yeah.
Is that a problem? Is that good that we want quality and we're so selective, or is that horrible? What is it indicative of?
It's insane, Hillel. You know that. Everyone knows it's insane. This checking boxes thing is not, is local. Doesn't make any sense whatsoever. You're marrying a real person. People do it because it's like a safety zone for them. A lot of it does make sense in terms of compatibility to do the research. You want a family that's going to work for you. But in the end of the day, we all know that the best shidduchim are authentic. Meaning, once I use the word authentic a lot, I'm sorry. It's got to be, real people marrying real people. And how many times have you and I seen shidduchim that did not make any sense on paper, and they're the best marriages ever? It's stop by looking at me. No one can explain how this British boy married a Memphis girl. Totally different personalities, but it's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted. And I know this. I have friends like Reb Teller who made Shidduch after Shidduch totally unintuitive. No one was checking boxes. We live in a generation that's paranoid about these boxes, and real educators, real mechanchim have to proverbially hold the hand of their talmid or talmida and walk them through and say, no, that's not how these things work. You do your shtadlus, you try and make sure that it makes sense on paper, and a little bit, you got to listen to the baskol. The baskol means that people are read to you, and you got to look at the list over here and say, forget about the boxes. Who is this person? Why are they reading this person to me? What is the magic of this person? And very, very often you'll realize that, yeah, the parents are divorced, but this guy is a pitzutz, like we say in Israel, is an incredible guy. And I always tell young ladies, look at the person and the real person, what he's all about. It's not about the boxes, it's about who he is. And is he suitable for you? Does he bring out the best of you? Do you laugh when you're with him? Does he make you feel good? And those make the best shidduchim.
So let's say you have a girl who she's 23. She's been in shidduchim since she was 18, and she's only gone on one date. She does not get resumes, and for no real good reason. Her father's a nice man. He's an engineer, or he does his job. He's not a millionaire. He's not a Rosh Hashiva. He lives in Brooklyn. She's got nothing that's highlighting her, right? But she's a good girl, or he's a good boy. It's more usually the problem with the girls.
Sure.
What should she do? She's stuck. She's gone out in 5 years of shidduchim. She had one date.
Okay, so before I answer, I just want to make a little point. I have my wallet in my jacket right now. I could take it out. Actually, you know what? I'm going to take it out. What is it? Where's my wallet? Did you take it from me? It's somewhere over here. And yeah, here it is. This is my little wallet. Take it out every mincha at the end of my Shemona Esrei, because mincha is Yitzchak time. And in there, I got my list over here of people. To get on the list, you have to be 26. And those people are people that are Benos Bayis, people that we're close to, my wife and I, that we really care about. And I'm davening for them every single mincha for shidduchim. Secret about this list. There's no way that you could have figured out who this list is. Some of the girls there, they scored 10 across and they're hitting 30, and they've got everything going for them. Chitzonius, Pneumius, where they come from, Yichus, they got everything. They just can't find a shidduch. And and then of course, you got the people who you can say, oh, if only she would do X, Y, or Z, then she could fix things. There's a whole range, and it doesn't really fit into a pattern. So what you're describing over here about the average girl from the average home, the father has an average job. He's not a mechanech. He's not a Rosh Hashiva. He's not a rich. I'm not sure you're right. It's these people, sometimes they find shidduchim straight away and everything goes smoothly for them. There's definitely a gezerah out there. The HaKadosh Baruch Hu is running his world before Mashiach, where there's a lot of pain and suffering going on. People can't have children. Parents have kids going off the derech. Sicknesses, that Mishpacha magazine, every week in Family First, you find out new things that people have that you never knew about. And there's people that have difficulty in finding shidduchim. And once again, go back to what I said to you beforehand. Baruch Hu is infinitely powerful. He can find you the right person tomorrow with ease. So make him the center of your avodas Hashem and tell HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's it. You bring him into the narrative and that's it. So tefillah, davening, that's what it's all about. I honestly don't think there's anything else, some kind of magic wand to be able to solve the shidduch issues, I don't like to call it a crisis, right? But the challenges that these young ladies have, except for because Baruch Hu is asking you to find new levels of tefillah inside of you that you never had before, to realize that you're going through genuine tsar, and you have to find new emek in tefillah, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu created this crisis. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will give you the solution at the right moment with the right person.
Wow. So what's your take on a girl who's 28 and is not yet married, and she refuses to allow her 26 and 24 and 22-year-old sisters to go out? Is that appropriate? Is that not appropriate?
So first of all, I don't think there's an across-the-board answer to this, because you have to know the dynamics of the family. But if there was a rule of thumb, and I discussed this with my Rebbeim back then, I can't remember, it was Reb Moshe or I have discussed it with my Rebbeim, and they gave me a general mahalach. They said the world has changed. Pre-war Europe, everyone went, the oldest daughter, and then the next. The world has changed because we're fully aware that it's extremely, extremely hard to find a good shidduch. Because Baruch Hu made this in a sign for our door. So what you have to do is figure out how to do it in a way that's mechubad to the older sister. But the moment you hit, I had this discussion this Shabbos. I was Shabbos in Boston. I told the young lady, you should wait for the moment. You should wait for the moment, because she was 21, sister was 23. I don't remember what I told her, but maybe I told her, wait till your 22nd birthday. After that, you're going to have to tell your sister, I'm going to ask a Shaila. You can come to me. I'll tell you should start dating. Your sister is going to have to deal with it. I want to tell you something here. I've seen this enough time to say it's almost like a trend. Because Baruch Hu opens doors of Rachanim. The younger sister gets married. How many times have you heard, and I've heard, that soon after the older sister finds her shidduch? Families get that, they get that petach of Rachanim, because Baruch Hu, so to speak, takes away the din in that family. Let me just summarize what I just said, because it's kind of not clear. I want to say there's no rule of thumb. You have to know the family. But if there would be a rule of thumb, you have to break that rule of waiting for that sister in the world that we live in. And approximately when a young lady is 22 or 23, she's going to have to respectfully and in a way of tact explain to older sister, use Das Torah as your alibi, that you have to start dating. Also, one more thing. If a younger sister gets somebody, gets suggested someone. So my theory is, where HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes it that people suggest shidduchim, I call it a baskol. If somebody mentions a name for you, you see it's kind of random. People from all over the place suddenly appear and suggest people. You can't just ignore it. You have to take that suggestion seriously. It's not the same as going to a shadchan. Somebody comes up to you and says to you, there's a boy I think is certainly matim for you, then you may have to go and tell your sister, I'm sorry, I need to date this young man.
So let's say you end up going out and it's like
totally off the mark? Does that mean it wasn't a bas kol, or it was a Hashem wanted you to go through that process?
It could have been a bus call that you should learn something about yourself. That's how Kadosh Baruch Hu rolls. It's what happens. You think about it, when you went into Shidduchim, names came from all over the place, and your thought process was this way, that way. Fast forward 5 years, it's all irrelevant, because Baruch Hu sent you the person that you're supposed to marry. And you see there's a sudden mahalach how Kadosh Baruch Hu sent you names. And you need to listen. You need to listen to the names that suggest, take them seriously, and then ask yourself, is it right to you? If the answer is no, no. If the answer is yes, then you're going to have a chat with your sister. Or ask your parents to have a chat with your sister.
So let's move on to another topic. You wrote the biography of Reb Moshe Shapiro, who I think we can say was the champion of Machshava, or at least one of them, the last 50 years. So I want to talk a little bit about that. And my first question is, what exactly is Machshava? How would you define it? Because the people who are into Machshava, then anything that they like is Machshava. And the people who don't like Machshava, anything they don't like is labeled Machshava. What is Machshava?
Okay, so the way I would explain to a beginner, just to keep everything simple, is that Machshava, in contrast to Musar, right? Musar is how you build yourself, and Machshava is how you understand how Hashem runs his world. So, classic Machshava textbook would be Derech Hashem. Classic Musar textbook would be Mesilas Yesharim, both written by the same author. Now, again, I'm simplifying it to no end. But when you learn Mesilas Yesharim, you find out how to become a better person, to work in Zehiras and Zrias, Jesus and Nikias and so on. When you learn Derech Hashem, you answer the question is, what is God? What does it mean there's a God in this world? What's he all about? How am I supposed to understand it? Revolba, okay, this is probably going to be your next question. Okay, but Revolba used to say that it's a Chil Hashem when young men and young women cannot, well, he said young men, again, I added young women, that cannot eloquently answer a secular Jew basic questions in Judaism. Yel Zechil Hashem, he said this 30 years ago, suggested that every yeshiva katana boy should learn Kuzari, classic Machshava, Sefer. I teach it in the yeshiva that I work in. Do you know I work in yeshivas as well? You know, I'm a Gemara Rebbe. Okay, these are like secrets that people don't know. The bottom line is that Derech Hashem, chapter 1, nature of God. Chapter 2, what's the purpose of the world? How many times do people ask you, so Hashem created, why? What did he want? Then people ask, why did he make life so difficult? Why do bad things happen to good people? That's really chelik based in Derech Hashem. What's the unique nature of Klal Yisrael? It's Paragimel. Then you want to know about all these concepts in Judaism, like what's the purpose of angels, and why do we have demons and Shadim, and why do we have what happens after you die? What's the purpose of Mashiach? What is Ches Mason? What is Olam Haba? These are the basic tenets of Judaism, of how we live our lives.
So I want to just interject. What would you say to someone who says, yeah, that was needed in the 1700s when there was, enlightenment, or then eventually Haskalah, but now like everything's set in stone and Yiddishkeit sort of is, everything is found out. And why do I need to learn Derech Hashem? And let me just, learn Lumdus or learn Mishnah Berurah. What would you tell people?
I could not disagree with you more. It's the exact opposite of what's happening. Reb Moshe Shapiro, my Rebbe, was once called in for censure by Rashach. Rashach was the Gadol Hador. Reb Moshe Shapiro looked up to him as the Gadol Hador. There's no question about it. He called him in, and Rashach said to him, I hear you're teaching to beginners in Ur Sameach back in the day. Maharal, right? You're teaching all these deep esoteric concepts, the meaning of life and all these things that we never had that. What's wrong with teaching them Mesilas Yesharim? In Europe, that's what they did. Gemara, Rashi, Tosfos, Shulchan Aruch, Mesilas Yesharim. I grew up, we never had a Machshava Seder. We had a Musar Seder. We learned afternoon Seder. The last half hour before Mar, between 6:30 and 7, was a Musar Seder. And we would learn Mesilas Yesharim. We would learn Shari Tshuva. We learned Chavis Levavos. Those were the classics for that we learned. Bottom line is that Reb Moshe said to Rashach, there was a window open over there in Panovich. He said, he pointed out over there, he says, I learned my Mahalach from there. And he was pointing to Reb Dessler's home. And Rashach says, Dessler is near to Mahalach. He did not hold of what Reb Dessler had done. Reb Moshe held that Reb Dessler created a revolution, and this is why I was passionate to say that I disagree with you. He felt it was a Hiras Shah, and he felt that our generation needed it. And Reb Dessler foresaw what we see today, a depressed generation, a generation where people have lost their Simchas Chaim, where people are going through things by rote, and he needed to inject this fuel of simcha and joy, and that comes through understanding the bigger picture of Yiddishkeit. So what Reb Dessler started, and like you mentioned beforehand, Reb Hutner, and Reb Shlomo Feivel, and all these people that created this new mahalach for the literacy yeshiva world to learn Machshava, was definitely a harasha. Reb Moshe told me, and Rabbi Gershenfeld, we were in there together, we asked him to explain what he does. And Reb Moshe said he suspects that maybe the world is changing and the harasha no longer applies. I'm not exactly sure what he meant by that.
One sec, can I take a step back? Why is it a hirasha? Why do you even need to say it's a hirasha? What's the problem with learning Machshava? Like the Derech Hashem was written just as a Band-Aid, or there's a genuine growth, intellectual growth that one has when they know they can tell you the inner workings or the symbolisms behind psukim, behind ideas. You have people, they're learning Chumash, they have no idea. The Bris Ben Abasar, no clue. These are fine Talmid Chacham, no idea why we're pouring oil over Kohanim's heads. No clue what the Lechem Apanim is supposed to symbolize. No idea why do we need luchos. Why do I need luchos? Why do I need a Seres Dibros? Why do those Seres Dibros get in and not other things? With no interest. So I don't. Why is it? Why do you need? I'm lumping maybe incorrectly Machshava into just what is the symbolism behind Torah, behind Yiddishkeit, behind what we do, why we do it. Why do you need a Hirah for that? Shouldn't it be like a basic layer in Yiddishkeit that should be explored?
So first of all, you're 100% right. It should not have to be a Hirah. It should be just a chelik of Torah like any other chelik. And I'll prove it to you. Since the beginning of time, it has always been central to our learning. But what happens is, before the Dafyomi world appeared, people used to skip Agadata. So, my father grew up in Romania. My dad knew Nashim Nezikim. They would just rush through the Agadata sections and just learn it superficially. Reb Moshe Shapiro, as you know, I learned with him 2 blot of Perek HaRoeh on dreams over 3 years, just to learn how these things work. And he would show that you can use the same tools of Shnaim Eichsim Betalis to understand an Agadata on the Rabbi Chana Sugis. And that's what he opened up for Klal Yisrael. And what happened is that, as Rashach was pointing out, that it just became ignored because it wasn't considered necessary. But it's a distortion, because let's go back to, you mentioned, okay? The Rishonim, Rashi and the Ramban explained Chumash, and they opened their ideas that Chumash is a teaching of how to live your life. The Ramban says that Sefer Bereshis is the first Musa book of Derech Eretz, it's Kodma L'Torah, how to live your life. We mentioned over the Gemara, the Rishonim, and then afterwards, when the Arizal came, he inserted Kabbalah, and later on the Hasidic movement. They were supposed to be part of our Torah and part of what builds us as human beings. We're 120, and we're asked a quiz on Torah, and we're supposed to know Kol HaTorah Kulei. So that includes this chelik of Torah of understanding Tainei HaMitzvos and the Machshava that becomes behind it.
Do you feel as though the people who want to label Machshava as esoteric and Kabbalistic and swimming in the deep end before you know how to swim in the shallow end, let's say there's truth to that.
Do you think it's become way too broad where you can potter yourself for not knowing basic psukim in Parshas Bereshis, like basic taich and minimal understanding because, hey, it's Machshava, and I don't do Machshava because Reb Shach said not to learn Machshava. Do you think that's horrible?
So you have, yeah, you're so right. Oh, you're so right. This is in other words, you got to be careful on both ends. What we've noticed is that Machshava, which is instantly attractive, right? Somebody wants to understand what Machshava is in contrast to Halacha and Gemara, right? You have over here a table, right? It's a beautiful table. You have a cup with water over here. Technically speaking, this is your Shabbos table, your Shulchan Aruch. All you had to do is put out plastic and put on food that's delicious. That's not what your Rebbetzin does. She's going to put flowers in the middle. She's going to make sure that the napkins match the plates. She's going to make sure everything is beautiful. Gemara Rashi Tesis is the bread and butter of Judaism. That is what I call how we plug into HaKadosh Baruch Hu's essence, is understanding my ox coring your cow who pays for the aborted fetus, right? That's what Gemara is. It's HaKadosh Baruch Hu's mind. Shulchan Aruch is how we live our lives. That is the Shulchan Aruch, is the table of bare bones. But we need yofi. It's very important to make the thing beautiful. And that's why Machshava gives everything a breadth and a deeper understanding. And it just makes it so much more beautiful to live a life as a Jew. Like you said, you shake a lulav, you know what you're doing. You do a sukkah, you understand what it's all about. Every mitzvah comes with time. Why are we davening for Mashiach? Why in the Shemona Esrei should we be passionate about Yishlayim Ercha Barach Tasha? Why on earth don't we study Siddur more than we do? All these things gives yofi to the rhythm of Jewish life. Then there's the other end. Okay, and this is the point I wanted to make. There are people that they go for the flowers and they forget there's a table over there. They take the dessert and they forget the meat and potatoes. And one of my pet peeves, ladies and gentlemen, this is a Menachem Nissel pet peeve, is some people, they just, they put out in cure classes, they say, let's learn Kabbalah, right? Whatever it is. And they take people and it drives me nuts that my students in the Bay, they know the 10 spheros before they know the 12 tribes. There's something wrong over here. Okay, they know the 7 spheros better than they know the 7 dwarfs. Okay, this is what's going on over here. So they're already in this whole thing. And I don't know whether you wanted me to go into this, but this morphs into the whole Segula culture. It's a distortion of being able to have the foundations first and then build the yofi on the foundations. So what's healthy? What's healthy is that always the ikar has to be, like you mentioned, halacha, so the man study of Talmud, and just to know the basics of Jewish life. But then to make it exciting so you can be passionate about it, so you're prepared to moisten nefesh for it, then you have to connect to the yofi. You have to connect to the breadth and the infinite depth, as Reb Moshe Shapiro would show, that every single word in Chumash, every single word in Chazal has layers upon layers of Eimek. And every word in the Siddur, as Reb Chaim Volozhin says, has tilim shel kavaris, layers upon layers, and to expose yourself to that. And suddenly it becomes extremely exciting, becomes extremely beautiful. Just tell you a story that happened to me 2 weeks ago. Girl told me how difficult it was for her to daven. I get this question all the time. I'm the tefillah teacher, so I wrote a book on tefillah for women, right? Yeah. The art scroll Siddur for women is based on my Rich Lev. Now, girls say to me, how come that for you, Rebbe Nissel, it's so easy to daven, and for me, it's so hard? And the first thing I tell her is that because I understand the words. I took the time out to understand my Seshaba, Samaga, and my Sachnias. My Melech Ozeh, Moshiach, and Morgen. They're not just synonyms. Each one's a different level of Eimek. So if you learn these things and you connect to these things, so suddenly tefillah becomes so fascinating. I always tell them that Yom Kippur is the most boring, most tedious day in your life if you don't understand what you're doing. At some point, everyone has to sit there and figure out what the Avodah is all about, so that it becomes what Reb Moshe would say, meratek. Okay, so avodah becomes the most exciting part of Yom Kippur. Nothing is more exciting than the avodah when you study what it's all about and understand what you're doing.
So why in our culture, unless I'm misreading the culture, which is entirely possible, that is not the mahalach that's proposed. It's all about halacha and learning learning Gemara, and somehow that will magically transform your Yom Kippur. Like, you're gonna take time to learn up the words and of the Siddur of Yom Kippur. You're nuts. Right? You're gonna learn Pirush Hamnilas. Like, when are you gonna learn that? Like, between which Seder are you learning that? You know what I mean? If you're a balabas, you only have an hour to learn a day, so you better be learning Daf Yomi. When are you learning about the intricacies of Yaakov's bracha to his sons when he was, which are fabulous and rich and really meaningful to us and should carry it. I don't have time for that, and it's not preached. It's all learn Mishnah Berurah, learn Daf Yomi.
You know, in the real pragmatic life, we're both right. Let me tell you how it works. Honestly, for most teens, most of the time, if they're in a good home, in a good environment, you're right. Just teach them Gemara, Rashi, Tosfos, Shulchan Aruch, Mishnah Berurah, the way it's supposed to be. I've also found that younger kids, they don't really have the emotional breadth to really appreciate Machshava. It's kind of wasted in them. Somewhere in your 20s, you find that you need more. And Avraham goes through this, I don't know how to say it nicely. They go through this thing where they need the same point where you stop learning Nashim Nezikim and he's telling her, it's like, duh, there's all pints of Shas I never saw before. First thing you learn brachos and you learn, I don't know, kachin, whatever it may be. At the same time, you suddenly should make a Seder on Shabbos to learn the Parsha, like you mentioned. First, make sure you know the Rashis. Next, you learn the Rambans. Afterwards, whatever floats your boat. At some point or other, you switch into and learn the Rapsodics and the Sfas Emes, and until eventually you see this the most exciting thing ever. How much time should you spend on it? I don't know, a 1-to-9 ratio. 10% of your time should be Machshava, 90% should be on Gemara, Rashi, Tosfos, and Halacha. That 10%, like Yisrael Salanta said, okay, that's the talent, it's the spice that makes the whole soup taste good.
So I want to talk about Reb Moshe for a little bit. Can you explain to people who are unfamiliar, who are not nearly as familiar as you are, who Reb Moshe was, what his impact on the world is? Because a lot of people are impacted by him and don't even realize that they're impacted by him, because they're impacted either by Talmidim or by people who are Talmidim, who are closet Talmidim, secret Talmidim. Can you explain who he was and sort of the revolution that he started?
I wrote a book about this. Not that I'm self-promoting, whatever. This is exactly what I wanted from my book, was to bring Reb Moshe to the world that did not know him and to whet their appetite, like Reb Aaron Lopiansky in his Haskama for me. He beautifully wrote that the hope is that reading Menachem Nissel's book will give you a yearning to learn Reb Moshe's Torah for real. And with that, all the other great people that, Reb Dessler and Reb Hutner and all the other people that wrote in that style. Reb Moshe Shapiro, the essence of who he was a Talmud of two people. By the way, I'm generalizing because there's somebody out there, or I'm scared it's going to be at my throat. I'm making things very simple. He had two Rebbeim. There's a Brisker Rav and Reb Dessler. The Brisker Rav is what built his eternal world. Brisker Rav was made him the most machmir person that I knew, where he would learn up the sugyas of, I don't know, shofar, and find new chumras in shofar that no one else has. The Brisker Rav is what created his incredible inner power to be layers upon layers of depth in everything that he does. But Reb Dessler gave him that passion that was his central engine, that we have to be paranoid in a healthy way. Today, you always have to add that, paranoid about what's happening to Klal Yisrael. And that, I think, is the main message that Reb Moshe wanted from his Talmidim. The moment you wake up, the moment you go to sleep, ask yourself, the nashi ka'afa lakol tiyeh, right? Afa means earth. Earth is where you plant seeds. You put on this world to be able to empower the people around you. And always ask yourself, can I do more? Can I do more for Klal Yisrael? Can I do more to take away their pain? Can I make more to Makara people? This was something that was so passionate for him when he would send someone out to America to open up a cure center. He would literally cry and he would scream out and said, every day there are trainloads of Jewish neshamas going to Auschwitz every single day. And we see it. How can people in Europe sleep? No, they have to sleep. They can't be paranoid like Reb Moshe. But how can they sleep when we know that the vast majority of young Jewish men and women in this country believe that there's a genocide in Palestine? The vast majority of young men and women who are Jewish in New York tomorrow are going to vote for whatever it's called, Mamdani. What's going on over here? This should bother you to your core. And Reb Moshe tried to transmit that passion to all his Talmidim to take care about the Klal. He would send everybody out as much as he could. The moment that they're ready, he would send them out. The moment that he felt that they had finished their self-growth, he would encourage them to go and shake up the world. He never really forgave me for coming back from Memphis. He told I should stay there. It was the only time in my life that I really did not listen to him. You know, I became Menachem Nissel in Memphis. Before that, I was just an avrech. He thought I should continue doing what I was doing over there. He even warned me that terrible things would happen if I left. And they did. And it was just a crazy thing. It was a crazy thing. He did this to everyone, sending them to wherever he felt that he could wake up Jews. He had a shita that whenever there's tension, that's where you should go. When South Africa had their big revolution, he sent his Talmudim to South Africa. He was a big fan of going to Russia, Ukraine. He felt those places people are thinking because there's so much going on. I was hoping that Simchas Torah 2 years ago would cause people to think and to change, and the Kiruv movement should have a new flowering. I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing it at all, which is no end of frustration for me. I cannot understand.
Can you explain? Because from the way the media presents and the newspapers and the magazines, you would think that Mashiach is mamash here because everyone is from, because you see pictures of people hugging Sifrei Torah and putting on tefillin, and then crates and truckloads of tefillin are being distributed to people are lining up. So what do you mean that you don't see the Kiruv movement that got inspired?
It's a numbers game. There's definitely, Baruch Hashem, Achshar Adar, we've seen a lot of beautiful things happening. And the cure workers that work so hard, they still manage to squeeze every year 2 or 3 more people that are Shomer Shabbos. But it's a number game, because every person that they get, there's another 1,000 that they don't get. And the fact is, I taught a few days ago in the Bay Yerushalayim. Every person I teach there is precious, but the numbers, and I'm not blaming the Bay, I'm not blaming the Makarvim, it's pathetic. It's minuscule. It's not, the college campus kids are not coming there because they're saying, well, what is anti-Semitism? Why don't they wake up and say, I need to explore and figure out what my Yiddishkeit is all about? It's just not happening. And I'm not saying that there's no gezerah on this generation. Maybe there is. I'm saying that each person should ask themselves, can I do more? Each person should feel passionate. Is there a possibility I can affect my coworker? Is there a possibility that I can talk to my second cousin who asked me questions about what it means to be frum and to do more? What you're describing is just a little trickle. The whole revolution that happened in Eretz Yisrael after Simchas Torah, at the end of the day, it was there, but it was still minuscule compared to what was left over.
Do you feel as though the amount of money and resources and time and emotional energy put on fighting anti-Semitism, and every congressman who put some tweet, some email that had a little bit of anti-Semitism and it was attacked and it was fought, and looking back, it seems like so many resources were put into this PR battle of we are genocide, we're not, and maybe some of those funds or resources could have been diverted towards actual cure. Do you feel as though that could have changed things?
Hello, thank you for asking me that. I really appreciate it because the last 2 years, like a broken record, I've been saying this to anyone that could hear me, including my colleagues in Machshava magazine. I think it's a catastrophe about how the word anti-Semitism is being spun and being explained, and how to understand what's truly happening over here. Everyone is trying to understand using the dynamics, social dynamics, to understand the cause of anti-Semitism. Literally 1 hour ago, I was in someone's home, 2 hours ago in someone's home, and they explained to me, oh, Candace Owens, the reason why she became such a deep anti-Semite is because she married this type of Christian, and she got this kind of, old-fashioned Christian theology where Jews are the devil, etc., etc., etc. Zakol shtiyot. Zelo inyan bichlal. This has got nothing to do with what's really happening. Because Baruch Hu started a war on Simchas Torah. When he started the war, I say he started it. He told Hamas, this is the time for you to show the world that the IDF, when I, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, say no, they're useless. When I say yes, they will do miracles that no one else can ever explain. It's all about me. What happened was on Simchas Torah, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu was talking to his people and saying, wake up. Simchas Torah is the key to everything. We need to get back to Torah and to the Simcha of Torah. It happened on Shabbos. All these things was Hashem talking to us. And if you need the proof, he ended the war in terms of the hostages coming back on Erev Simchas Torah, just like Yosef Atzadik. 2 years you need to be in that bar, and then Yamim Paracholim. This time it wasn't Paracholim, it was Trump Cholim. That's the way it works. But these are all HaKadosh Baruch Hu's pawns. Hill, I'm so glad you asked me this because I want the whole world to know this. The cause of anti-Semitism is a dialogue between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Klal Yisrael. The cause of anti-Semitism has many, many subgenres, but it's two basic causes. One is what Eish HaTorah talks about correctly, is that Har Sinai, Sina Bala Olam. Klal Yisrael is always the Am HaNivcha. We will always have double standards towards the Jews. This is because we are, as Hitler correctly said, the conscience of the world. This is one dimension, but there's another dimension. There's another dimension, Reb Hillel. And that is in Parshas Shmos. The Medrash brings down that Klal Yisrael started assimilating into the Egyptian culture. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu saw that we started to become like our host country. And then HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, and I'm quoting from the Medrash, and it's a pasuk in Tehillim, Hafach libam lisnai oisam. HaKadosh Baruch Hu took the average Egyptian. Hafach libam means, and he artificially took the bechira of the average Egyptian and flipped it round. Hafach libam lisnai oisam, to hate the Jew. Those words were written when Klal Yisrael were in Egypt, and they are in 100% full force today. Nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. Every single free Palestine, and I had 4 free Palestines in Europe in 4 different cities this summer, a little bit traveling, and everyone free Palestines me. And, my initial reaction is, says, we're working on it. We're trying our best. But seriously, when someone screams me, free Palestine, what am I supposed to do? Is to remember what Revolver used to scream, quoting Rabbi Yisrael Salanter. And when your enemies come out against you, right? Tishmana Oznai, and Kamalei Mareim, Tishmana, because Baruch was talking to me. Halfach Libel, it's unnatural that suddenly everyone hates us. People have to wake up and smell the coffee. If you're hated by the people in Iceland and in Finland, where they've never seen a Jew, when everything is Keneged Ateva, when countries that were so pro-Israel suddenly flip over. We mentioned Candace Owens, there's thousands of them out there, on the right and the left. Why does my frum friends have to go explain there's a right-wing phenomenon, there's a left-wing phenomenon? There is a HaKadosh Baruch Hu phenomenon telling Klal Yisrael, wake up. Anti-Semitism is the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to greet Mashiach. that we have to realize that we're Hein Levadad Yishkain, that we are a nation that does not belong in this world. We're not part of this world. We're not connected to our host countries. And we have to go back to our roots and remember what it means, Klal Yisrael, and specifically what it means, Simchas Torah. Those are the things that we need to work on more than anything else in this world. And this goes back to your question about Reb Moshe Shapiro. I am convinced that this last 2 years, he would have been pushing all his Talmidim to go full out to try and scream Torah, Simchas Torah, Shabbos. These are the things that Kodesh Baruch was telling us to try and wake up people, and this is the focus. Now, I don't want to be misquoted because I actively encourage NCSY. I'm senior educator for NCSY. I acted for them to do what's called Israel advocacy. I believe strongly that all my students, next Shabbos, I'm going to be with Alami launch. I'm going to be with public school kids. I'm going to tell them to explain to the goyim around them exactly why what they're saying is a lie and what's really happening in Israel. And I'll give them the tools to do so. On a purely secular narrative, oh, Menachem Nissel, you're a hypocrite. No, I'm not a hypocrite. Because my goal is not that my secular, not yet from students of NCSY should change the mind of the goy. It's so they should change the mind of themselves. Start to think. When they're explaining the uniqueness of the Jewish people and how we have the most moral army and how we literally are the most beautiful people in the world, it should start to affect themselves and maybe they'll come to do tshuva. The main reason for Israeli advocacy is that the person giving it over should wake up and realize it's Kodesh Baruch Hu talking to us.
You don't think it runs the risk of like promoting a gullus mindset, victimhood, where we need to prove ourselves and we need to show that we are like everyone else, where people are advocating, and isn't it slightly difficult to discern what the purpose is, and especially when Jews see big Jewish organizations who are doing it in Washington and in Congress and are sending letters, which are all hishtadlus, but it so easily looks like we need to assert our place amongst our communities, and why are we being treated differently? And we need to fix the PR problem.
It's going to happen anyhow. We Jews feel the need to explain ourselves to people. The problem is that with all that explaining ourselves to the people, we've forgotten the central narrative that Hashem is talking to us. I'm going to give you an example. This Shabbos, people ask me about why is it that the Haredim don't send their sons to the army? It's a topic I don't like to talk about, mainly because it's too complex to explain how at the same time we love, we adore, we put our soldiers on a pedestal, and at the same time we see terror in a totally different dimension. But what I do say, and normally it takes me 30 seconds to say this, and it immediately refocuses the conversation. I say, I can't really talk to you unless we have a common page that we're on. And I ask them, what resonates more with you? Is Hamas the problem and the IDF is the solution? Or is Hamas the punishment and Klal Yisrael is the problem? If the second version resonates with you, then we can talk. Because the punishment means that Kodesh Baruch Hu is using Hamas as a stick. So really, Kodesh Baruch Hu is the centerpiece of the narrative, what's happening over here. And it changes a whole way of thinking. What does the Kodesh Baruch Hu want from us? So that is what I think needs to change. We need to bring Kodesh Baruch Hu central to the narrative. Anti-Semitism is because we have assimilated into a culture around us, both on a practical level and also in a mindset. We think Goyish. This is what Moshe was begging people to start to think through a terror viewpoint, to understand that we're in Galus Yishmael. And this was predicted 2,000 years ago. And the climax of Galus Yishmael includes a chibur with Esav, and includes a chibur with, I don't like to use the phrase, but Erev Rav, which is just another way of saying, Achechem, Seinechem, Menadechem, the enemy from within. Everything is happening exactly the way it's supposed to be. The curtain is coming down on Jewish history. And Reb Moshe Shapiro, if he was alive today, would say to us, what are you doing to bring in our brothers and sisters so when the curtain comes down, they'll be on the right side.
So, in conclusion, what would you say to all the viewers out there? A tip with the full force of Reb Moshe behind you to stay on fire in today's day and age, to walk through the country they live in, the streets, the workplaces that they're in, and stay as a passionate Yid, even in the crazy world we live in. What would you say to such people?
I mentioned beforehand, it's just a scene that people were talking about Davon Ishwan Esrei, that when we finish Hashemon Esrei, which is our time out with Hashem, and we're about to go out into the big wide world, the last thing we say is the L'kai Natsar. Hashem, first thing is make sure I speak. I don't say Lashon Hara, I say nice things to people. I use the power of my speech correctly. Immediately after we say the words, V'nashi ka'afa lakol tihiyeh. Nashi, my essence, ka'afa should be earth, should empower people around me. Lakol means every single person that I meet. And we don't live on an island, we live in a context. So we have our family, we have our colleagues, we have our neighbors, we have people that we meet when we travel. Because Baruch is saying to you, can you be a positive influence in their lives? Can you be a light in their darkness? Can you smile and compliment people who are going through stress and going through anxiety? This is the call of our era. This is what we have to focus on. That's what it's all about. So when Melech HaMashiach comes, we can say, we were there. We tried our best for you. This is what it's all about.
Wow, amazing. Rabbi Nissel, thank you very much for joining the Judaism
Thank you for the honor.
podcast.
Sorry if I got too worked up at the end.
Not at all. Chazak.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.